I buried my best friend 3 years ago. Today, I saw him buying a coffee in Rhode Island. Rain or shine, he would stand before it, a silent sentinel in a world that never stopped roaring for his attention. "Another quarter, Marcus," he'd begin, his voice a low rumble against the hum of distant city life. "Our hospitals in New Delhi are breaking ground, a new wing in London specializing in regenerative medicine." He'd recount triumphs and tribulations, business dealings and personal reflections, a one-sided conversation with a man who had been dead for 3 years. Marcus Blackwood, his best friend, his confidant, his partner in countless youthful escapades, and later in the nascent stages of Thorne Medical. The sting of loss, though dulled by time, was an ever-present ache, a phantom limb of his soul. Elias often wondered if his ritual was a testament to his unwavering loyalty or a morbid coping mechanism. The world saw him as an untouchable titan, a man of steel and sharp intellect. But here, before Marcus's grave, he was simply Elias, grappling with a void that no amount of wealth or power could fill. He'd bring Marcus up to speed on the intricate dance of global economics, the fickle nature of the stock market, and the ever-evolving landscape of medical advancements they had once dreamed of conquering together. He'd even share anecdotes of his latest endeavors in philanthropy, always acknowledging Marcus's guiding principles that had shaped his own moral compass. Today, as the autumn leaves painted the cemetery in hues of fiery red and burnt orange, Elias felt a peculiar unease. A shiver, not from the crisp air, traced its way down his spine. He dismissed it as a byproduct of his relentless schedule, the constant demands on his time and mind. But as he laid a fresh bouquet of Marcus's favorite white lilies, a fleeting image flashed in his mind. A shadow, a silhouette, just at the periphery of his vision. He turned sharply, scanning the peaceful expanse of gravestones, but found nothing. Just the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant caw of a crow. He sighed, convincing himself it was a trick of the light, a lingering manifestation of his grief. He promised Marcus he'd visit next week, the familiar weight of their shared past settling heavily upon him as he walked away, unknowingly leaving a piece of his heart behind with the silent marble. The following Tuesday, a last-minute board meeting in Providence, Rhode Island, pulled Elias away from his usual routine. The city was a blur of hurried meetings and strategic negotiations, but a sudden craving for an authentic local brew led him to a small, unassuming pub tucked away on a cobbled side street. The pub was lively, filled with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of glasses. Elias, accustomed to private jets and opulent dining rooms, found a strange comfort in the unpretentious atmosphere. He sat at the bar, nursing a dark ale, his mind still buzzing with figures and projections. He was contemplating a new acquisition strategy when a figure at the other end of the bar caught his eye. The man was laughing, a deep, resonant sound that sent a jolt through Elias. It was a laugh he knew, a laugh that once echoed through grand ballrooms and quiet libraries, a laugh that belonged solely to Marcus. Elias froze, his glass halfway to his lips. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden silence in his mind. He dismissed it as wishful thinking, a cruel trick of his subconscious. Marcus was dead. He had seen the casket, attended the funeral, visited the grave for 3 long years. But something tugged at him, an insistent whisper in the back of his mind. The man turned slightly, revealing a profile that, despite a jagged, angry scar marring the left side of his face, was undeniably familiar. The same strong jawline, the intelligent glint in his eyes, even the way he gestured with his hands while talking, a subtle flick of the wrist, was eerily reminiscent of Marcus. Elias felt a cold dread creep over him, intertwining with a burgeoning, impossible hope. He couldn't breathe. His vision narrowed, the bustling pub fading into a blurry background. He had to be mistaken. This was insanity. Yet every fiber of his being screamed that it was him. He pushed himself off the stool, his legs feeling like lead. He needed to get closer, to confirm, to dispel this terrifying, exhilarating delusion. But as he took a step, the man stood up, paid his tab, and walked out into the cool evening air. Elias rushed after him, pushing past startled patrons. The carefully cultivated composure of a billionaire dissolved into primal urgency. He burst onto the street, his eyes frantically scanning the crowd. The man was gone, just like that, vanished into the anonymity of the city. Elias stood there, panting, the taste of ash in his mouth. He had seen him. He was certain of it. But how? And why? The next few hours were a feverish, almost manic state. He scoured the streets of Providence, his security detail, usually a discreet presence, now a frantic force fanning out across the city. He described the man in vivid detail, the scar, the laugh, the way he moved. His team, accustomed to his unwavering composure, exchanged worried glances. They knew better than to question their boss, but the wild desperation in his eyes was unsettling. Elias felt like a madman chasing a ghost. He returned to his hotel suite, the opulent surroundings feeling suffocating. He paced, his mind racing, replaying the brief encounter over and over. He needed proof, something tangible beyond a fleeting glimpse and a familiar laugh. Then a memory surfaced, sharp and vivid. A small, intricate tattoo on Marcus's inner left wrist, a stylized Celtic knot, a symbol of their enduring friendship. It was a secret, a shared pact from college days, known only to them. If this man had that tattoo in that exact spot, then his impossible theory would be true. The thought sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through him. He called his head of security, a former Special Forces operative named Cale, his voice tight with urgency. "Cale, I need every security camera in Providence that operates within a mile radius of O'Malley's pub. Every single one. And I need a team to track down anyone matching this description. Find him." Cale, sensing the unprecedented gravity in Elias's voice, simply responded, "Consider it done, Mr. Thorne." Elias knew he sounded deranged, but he couldn't shake the conviction that had taken root in his soul. This wasn't grief playing tricks on him. This was something far more profound, far more sinister. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, the city lights blurring outside his window. He imagined Marcus, alive, scarred but alive. The relief that washed over him was immense, almost debilitating. But hot on his heels came a surge of incandescent rage. If Marcus was alive, why was he declared dead? Who orchestrated this elaborate deception, and what unspeakable reasons lay behind it? The thought of someone deliberately erasing Marcus, making him disappear from his life, filled Elias with a cold fury that surpassed anything he had ever known. He vowed, in that quiet, desperate hour, that he would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The next day was a frantic activity. Cale and his team, fueled by Elias's relentless urgency, worked with remarkable efficiency. Every camera feed was scoured, every grainy image analyzed. Elias sat hunched over monitors, his eyes burning with exhaustion, scrutinizing faces, gestures, anything that could lead him back to the man from the pub. Hours bled into each other, the silence of the suite punctuated only by the clicks of keyboards and Cale's terse updates. Finally, a breakthrough. A high-resolution street camera from a nearby deli captured the man leaving the pub. The quality wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Elias leaned forward, his breath catching in his throat. The man was walking away, his left hand reaching into his pocket. For a fleeting second, the cuff of his jacket rode up, and there it was, a clear, unmistakable glimpse of the Celtic knot tattoo, exactly where it should be, the exact intricate design, the same faded ink. Elias stared, a silent gasp escaping his lips. It was him. It was Marcus. A wave of conflicting emotions crashed over him. Relief, so profound that it made his knees weak, mingled with a burning anger that threatened to consume him whole. He felt lightheaded, a strange mix of elation and dread. Marcus was alive. The words echoed in his mind, a mantra of impossible hope. But the joy was quickly overshadowed by the chilling reality of the situation. Someone had faked his death. Someone had orchestrated this elaborate, cruel charade. The scar, the amnesia, it all pointed to a deliberate, malicious act. Elias closed his eyes, picturing Marcus's vibrant smile, his quick wit, the countless shared moments that now seemed like fragile relics of a bygone era. He remembered the pain of the funeral, the eulogy he had delivered with a hollow ache in his chest, the years of grief and longing. All of it a lie, a monstrous, unforgivable lie. The thought fueled a cold, methodical determination within him. He would unravel this mystery. He would find out who was responsible and make them pay. The full, unbridled power of Elias Thorne, a man who moved mountains with a flick of his wrist, was now focused on a single, unwavering objective: to bring Marcus back and unmask the architects of this deception. Elias wasted no time. He immediately initiated a full-scale investigation, pulling strings that most people didn't even know existed. His network of contacts spanned the globe, reaching into the highest echelons of government, intelligence agencies, and private security firms. He made calls, his voice resonating with an authority that left no room for doubt or refusal. "I need answers," he declared to a former director of the CIA, now a consultant on his payroll. "And I need them yesterday." The man, accustomed to Elias's demands, nevertheless felt a tremor of apprehension in his voice. This wasn't about a hostile takeover or a new medical breakthrough. This was deeply personal, raw, and dangerous. He tasked his legal team with exploring every possible angle, every loophole, every means to obtain information. Subpoenas were drafted, private investigators were deployed, and data analysts began sifting through mountains of digital footprints. Elias didn't care about propriety or protocol. He wasn't above threatening, bribing, or leveraging every ounce of his considerable influence to get what he wanted. "Anyone who obstructs this investigation will face the full weight of my wrath," he warned, his eyes like chips of ice. The message was clear: cooperate or be crushed. The sheer scale of his resources was daunting. Within hours, a dedicated task force, hand-picked by Elias, was assembled. Former intelligence agents, forensic experts, and cyber sleuths worked around the clock, fueled by caffeine and the unspoken understanding that failure was not an option. Elias himself became the central nervous system of this operation, orchestrating every move, scrutinizing every report, his brilliant mind sharper than ever, honed by grief and now by a burning desire for retribution. He knew that faking a death and maintaining such a deception for 3 years required significant resources and powerful connections. This wasn't the work of a lone individual. This was a conspiracy, meticulously planned and executed. He suspected a powerful, shadowy organization, or perhaps a rival from his cutthroat business world, but the motive remained elusive. Why Marcus? What could he possibly have done to warrant such an elaborate and cruel disappearance? The questions gnawed at him, fueling his sleepless nights and relentless pursuit of the truth. He would not rest until he had his best friend back and the perpetrators brought to justice. The most crucial piece of evidence, or lack thereof, lay buried in the ground. Elias needed to exhume Marcus's grave. It was a macabre thought, a violation of the sacred, but it was necessary. He instructed his legal team to secure an immediate exhumation order. The request was met with resistance. Bureaucracy, legal hurdles, ethical concerns, all the usual obstacles that Elias usually bulldozed through with ease. But this time, the process was complicated by the sensitivity of the situation. "Explain the urgency," his lead lawyer, a seasoned veteran named Evelyn, advised. "Provide compelling reasons beyond a hunch." Elias was beyond rational explanation. He simply stated, "Marcus Blackwood is alive. The person buried in his grave is not him. I have evidence." He presented the grainy CCTV footage of the tattoo, a compelling piece of circumstantial evidence that defied easy dismissal. Evelyn, despite her initial skepticism, saw the fire in Elias's eyes, the unwavering conviction. She knew Elias Thorne never made baseless claims. She threw the full weight of Thorne Medical's legal department behind the motion, pulling in favors, leveraging connections, and arguing with a ferocity usually reserved for billion-dollar lawsuits. The news of a billionaire seeking to exhume his best friend's grave sent ripples through the media, but Elias didn't care. He ordered his PR team to manage the narrative, to deflect questions, to minimize speculation. His focus was singular: the truth. After intense legal wrangling, and with Elias's personal intervention with a high-ranking state senator, the order was granted. The date was set for early next week. Elias felt a knot of dread and anticipation tighten in his stomach. The exhumation would either confirm his wildest hopes or plunge him back into the abyss of grief and despair, confirming that he had truly lost his mind. He spent the intervening days in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of his empire, but his mind constantly drifting to the impending revelation. He visited Marcus's grave one last time before the exhumation, a strange mix of farewell and desperate hope in his heart. He ran his fingers over the cold marble, a silent promise to the man he believed was no longer beneath it. The image of Marcus's scarred face, the ghost of his laugh, and the undeniable tattoo burned in his memory, a beacon guiding him through the dark labyrinth of deception. The day of the exhumation was somber, shrouded in a heavy mist that seemed to mirror the mood of Elias and his small entourage. The cemetery was cordoned off, a scene of hushed efficiency as forensic teams and medical examiners prepared for the macabre task. Elias stood a short distance away, his face grim, his jaw clenched, watching the proceedings with a mixture of dread and grim determination. He felt a profound sense of intrusion, a violation of the sacred he had always associated with this place, but it was a necessary violation. As the coffin was carefully lifted from the earth, Elias's heart pounded against his ribs. He held his breath, bracing himself for whatever truth lay within. The lid was unsealed, and a hush fell over the small group. The medical examiner, a stoic woman with years of experience, peered inside. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her usually impassive face. She looked up at Elias, a strange expression on her face. "Mr. Thorne, this is not Marcus Blackwood." Elias felt a dizzying surge of relief and vindication. He had been right. He hadn't imagined it. "Who is it?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. The examiner continued her inspection, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It appears to be an unidentified male, Caucasian, late 40s to early 50s, signs of malnourishment, poor dental hygiene, consistent with someone who lived on the streets. No distinguishing marks other than a few old scars, consistent with a life of hardship." The news sent a fresh wave of fury through Elias. Not only had Marcus been taken, but his grave had been desecrated, filled with the body of a homeless man. The callousness of it, the sheer audacity was beyond comprehension. It was a deliberate act of contempt, a chilling message from whoever was behind this. Elias's hands balled into fists, his knuckles white. The image of the unidentified man, a silent victim in this elaborate scheme, fueled his resolve. He vowed that this man, too, would receive justice. His identity, his story, would be uncovered, as would the truth behind Marcus's disappearance. The game had just changed. The revelation from the exhumation was a brutal confirmation. Elias immediately directed his forensic team to identify the homeless man. This wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about exposing the full extent of the deception and the callous disregard for human life. The body, though long deceased, still held secrets that a skilled team could unearth. Dental records, DNA analysis, even bone structure could provide clues to his identity. Elias poured resources into this new facet of the investigation. He consulted with experts in missing persons cases, established a dedicated hotline for information, and even offered a substantial reward for anyone who could identify the deceased. The media, already captivated by the exhumation, now had another layer of intrigue to report. Elias, usually fiercely private, used the media attention to his advantage, ensuring the homeless man's story, however brief, was shared. He wanted the world to know the injustice that had been committed. Days turned into a week, and the painstaking work of identifying the unknown man continued. Elias felt a strange kinship with this anonymous victim, a shared bond in the face of a hidden enemy. He spent hours reviewing potential matches from missing persons databases, his heart heavy with the realization that this man had a life, a family that had been stolen from him, just as Marcus's had been. He imagined the grief of a family who believed their loved one was simply lost, unaware of the horrific fate that had befallen him. Finally, a breakthrough. A partial DNA match from a national database led to a distant relative. The man was identified as Arthur Jenkins, a veteran who had fallen on hard times and had been living on the streets for the past decade. He had a sister still alive who had been searching for him tirelessly. The news hit Elias with a pang of sorrow. Arthur Jenkins, a forgotten soul, had become a pawn in a game of deception. Elias arranged for Arthur to be reburied with dignity, a proper service, ensuring his sister had closure and a place to mourn. He understood, more than ever, the profound cruelty of those who had orchestrated Marcus's disappearance. With the confirmation that Marcus was indeed alive, albeit with amnesia and a scar, Elias's focus intensified. The legal and forensic teams were now working in tandem with the security detail, using every available resource to track down the man from the pub. Cale, Elias's head of security, was a blur of efficiency, coordinating teams across state lines. The initial search in Providence had yielded nothing, as the man seemed to vanish into thin air after his pub visit. But Elias had a hunch, a gut feeling that guided his decisions. He believed that whoever orchestrated Marcus's fake death would have taken precautions to keep him hidden. The fact that Marcus was out in public, even for a brief moment, suggested either a lapse in security or a deliberate risk. Elias considered the scar and the amnesia. Was Marcus being held against his will? Or was he simply a pawn, unaware of his true identity? The possibilities were endless and terrifying. Elias authorized the use of advanced surveillance technologies, drawing on his vast resources to deploy facial recognition software across public camera networks in multiple states, cross-referencing with data from public transport, hotel registrations, and even financial transactions, however small. He was building a comprehensive profile of the man, hoping to identify a pattern, a habit, anything that would lead them to his current location. He also considered the scar. Was it a result of an accident or a deliberate act of disfigurement to make him unrecognizable? The thought sent a chill down his spine. Days turned into a week, and the net tightened. Small leads started to emerge. A purchase made with a prepaid debit card in a small town in upstate New York, a fleeting glimpse on a bus security camera in rural Pennsylvania. Elias felt a surge of hope each time, quickly followed by the frustration of the leads growing cold. The perpetrators were cunning, meticulously covering their tracks. But Elias was more cunning, more resourceful, and fueled by a desperation that bordered on obsession. He wouldn't stop until he found Marcus. He wouldn't let him disappear again. As the investigation delved deeper, a name began to surface in whispered conversations and coded reports: the Syndicate. It wasn't an organization Elias had encountered directly in his business dealings, but the name evoked a chilling sense of shadowy power and ruthless efficiency. Cale, drawing on his intelligence background, revealed that the Syndicate was a clandestine network involved in everything from corporate espionage to high-stakes disappearances, often for political or economic gain. They operated outside the usual legal frameworks, their reach extending far beyond any single government's jurisdiction. The realization that Marcus might be entangled with such a group sent a fresh wave of dread through Elias. The Syndicate wasn't known for its mercy. Their operations were swift, brutal, and left no trace. The thought that Marcus, his kind-hearted, intellectually brilliant Marcus, could be a victim of such an organization was almost unbearable. Why him? What possible connection could he have had to such a dangerous entity? Elias racked his brain, revisiting every conversation, every shared secret, every detail of Marcus's life. He pushed his teams harder, urging them to find any link between Marcus and the syndicate. He deployed cyber warfare specialists to infiltrate their suspected digital strongholds, risking retaliation from a group known for its ruthless reprisals. He knew he was treading on dangerous ground, but the alternative, leaving Marcus to an unknown fate, was unthinkable. Elias felt a profound sense of helplessness despite his immense power. He was facing an enemy that operated in the shadows, a faceless adversary whose motives remained shrouded in secrecy. The fear for Marcus's safety became a constant companion. Was he being held captive? Was he being exploited for his intellect? The amnesia was a cruel twist, making him vulnerable, a blank slate for his captors to manipulate. Elias understood that time was of the essence. The longer Marcus remained with them, the harder it would be to bring him back to his true self. He swore an oath, a silent, furious vow, that he would tear down the syndicate piece by piece if they had harmed his friend. The motive remained the most perplexing piece of the puzzle. Why would the syndicate target Marcus? He wasn't involved in cutthroat corporate takeovers, nor did he possess any political secrets. His life revolved around medical research, humanitarian efforts, and his friendship with Elias. Elias replayed their conversations, searched through old documents, and scrutinized Marcus's research notes, desperately looking for a clue. Then a memory surfaced, a fleeting conversation from years ago. Marcus had been working on a groundbreaking research project at Thorne Medical, a highly experimental gene therapy that promised to revolutionize the treatment of rare, aggressive diseases. He had been incredibly passionate about it, often staying late, his eyes alight with the thrill of scientific discovery. He had spoken of ethical dilemmas, of the immense power and potential misuse of such technology. At the time, Elias had dismissed it as Marcus's natural caution, a scientist's ethical concerns. Now, it all made chilling sense. The gene therapy, in the wrong hands, could be a weapon of unimaginable power or a source of immense profit for those who didn't care about human lives. Elias immediately shifted the focus of his investigation to Marcus's research. He brought in his top scientific minds, men and women who had worked closely with Marcus, and ordered them to re-examine every aspect of the gene therapy project. He interrogated them about potential leaks, unusual inquiries, or any signs of espionage. The scientists, initially confused, quickly understood the gravity of the situation as Elias explained his suspicions. The realization that Marcus's humanitarian work could have led to his disappearance cast a dark shadow over Thorne Medical's noble mission. As his cyber team delved deeper into Marcus's digital life, they uncovered a series of encrypted files on a hidden partition of his old research laptop. The files were meticulously coded, a testament to Marcus's brilliant mind and his inherent need for secrecy. Elias watched intently as his lead cyber expert, a young prodigy named Anya, painstakingly worked to decrypt the data. The tension in the room was palpable, everyone aware that these files could hold the key to Marcus's fate. Hours crawled by, the only sound the soft hum of computers and Anya's focused breathing. Finally, with a triumphant gasp, she cracked the encryption. The files contained Marcus's extensive research on the gene therapy, but with an additional layer, detailed observations and concerns about a shadowy organization attempting to infiltrate the project. He had meticulously documented their attempts to steal his research, their methods of coercion, and even the names of some key operatives. He had been building a case against them, hoping to expose their true intentions. Elias read through the reports, his blood running cold. Marcus had known about the syndicate all along. He hadn't just been a victim. He had been a courageous, solitary warrior fighting to protect his groundbreaking research from falling into the wrong hands. He knew the risks, and he had faced them head-on. The admiration Elias felt for his friend swelled, mingled with a fresh wave of guilt. He should have listened more closely, should have taken Marcus's concerns more seriously. The files also contained a series of coded messages, digital breadcrumbs that Marcus had deliberately left behind, knowing that if something happened to him, Elias would eventually find them. The messages pointed to a secure server, a dead drop in a remote location, and a network of informants Marcus had cultivated. Elias felt a surge of hope. Marcus, even in his presumed death, was still fighting, still guiding him towards the truth. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fall into place, revealing a complex web of espionage, scientific ambition, and ruthless power. Armed with the decrypted files and Marcus's digital breadcrumbs, Elias dispatched a highly trained retrieval team to the location of the dead drop, a remote, abandoned lighthouse on a secluded stretch of coastline in Maine. The journey was fraught with anticipation and danger. The syndicate would undoubtedly have eyes and ears everywhere, and Elias knew they were stepping into a hornet's nest. Cale personally led the mission, understanding the critical importance of this mission. The lighthouse stood silhouetted against the stormy sky, a lonely sentinel guarding a treacherous coast. The team approached with extreme caution, their movements precise and coordinated. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of salt and decay. Following Marcus's instructions, they found a hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard in the caretaker's quarters. Inside, a waterproof container held a series of encrypted hard drives and a small, leather-bound journal. Elias received the package via secure satellite link, his hands trembling slightly as he opened the journal. Marcus's familiar handwriting filled the pages, a testament to his methodical nature. The journal detailed his growing suspicions about the syndicate, their attempts to steal his gene therapy research, and his fears for his own safety. He had been working with a small network of whistleblowers, individuals who had once been part of the syndicate, but who had grown increasingly uncomfortable with their unethical practices and their willingness to harm innocent people. Elias knew that these informants were the key to understanding the syndicate's inner workings and, more importantly, to finding Marcus. Cale and his team, utilizing the coded contact information from the journal, began the painstaking process of reaching out to these informants. It was a dangerous game. These individuals were living under deep cover, constantly looking over their shoulders, knowing that the syndicate would show no mercy to those who betrayed them. Elias understood the immense risk they were taking, and he offered protection, resources, and a guarantee of anonymity in exchange for their cooperation. The first contact was a former data analyst named Lena, a brilliant but terrified woman living in hiding in rural Canada. She confirmed Marcus's suspicions, detailing the syndicate's plan to weaponize the gene therapy for biowarfare and profit. She spoke of Marcus's courage, his unwavering moral compass, and his determination to expose them. She revealed that Marcus had been abducted before he could go public, and his death faked to cover their tracks. She also confirmed that Marcus had been kept alive, his memory erased, and his face scarred in an attempt to make him unrecognizable, ensuring he couldn't expose them. Lena also provided a critical piece of information. The syndicate had a hidden facility, a highly secure medical complex disguised as a wellness retreat, where they conducted their clandestine experiments and held their high-value assets. It was located deep within the Rocky Mountains, a fortress designed to be impenetrable. Elias felt a fresh surge of hope, intertwined with a chilling fear. Marcus was there. He was alive, but he was in the clutches of the syndicate. The time for passive investigation was over. It was time for action. The information from Lena propelled Elias into a new phase of the operation, extraction. He assembled an elite team, combining Cale's security specialists with former military operatives and medical personnel. This wasn't a corporate takeover, it was a rescue mission, dangerous and high stakes. Elias knew that storming a syndicate fortress was akin to declaring war, but he was beyond caring. He would burn the world down if it meant bringing Marcus home. The mountain fortress was indeed formidable, nestled deep within a remote canyon, protected by layers of security, motion sensors, and heavily armed guards. It was a self-sufficient complex designed to be off-grid and invisible. But the syndicate had underestimated Elias Thorne. His resources were limitless, his determination absolute. He deployed a covert operative to infiltrate the perimeter, disabling security systems, creating diversions, and paving the way for the main assault. Elias, despite Kael's protests, insisted on being part of the mission. He wouldn't stand by while his best friend was held captive. He felt a primal need to be there, to personally oversee Marcus's rescue. Dressed in tactical gear, his heart thumping with a mix of fear and exhilaration, Elias moved through the silent, snow-covered landscape, the cold biting at his exposed skin. He was no soldier, but his resolve was unbreakable. The infiltration was tense, a ballet of shadows and suppressed movements. The air was thick with the unspoken understanding of the dangers they faced. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the facility, Elias felt a growing sense of urgency. Every minute counted. He imagined Marcus inside, confused, lost, his memory a blank slate. He would not fail him. He would bring him home no matter the cost. The team moved stealthily through the facility, encountering minimal resistance thanks to the advanced infiltration team. They bypassed cameras, disabled alarm systems, and neutralized guards with silent precision. Elias, guided by Lena's layout of the facility, knew exactly where Marcus would be held, in a specialized medical wing designed for experimental treatments and memory manipulation. The thought of what the syndicate might have done to Marcus fueled his burning rage. As they approached the designated wing, a commotion erupted further down the corridor. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and the metallic clang of boots echoed through the halls. Their infiltration had been discovered. Gunfire erupted, and Kael's team immediately engaged the syndicate guards. Elias, shielded by Kael, pressed forward, his eyes scanning every face, every room, desperately searching for Marcus. Then he saw him. In a sterile, white room, surrounded by medical equipment, a man sat slumped in a chair, his head bowed. His left cheek was still marred by the jagged scar, but his hair, once neatly combed, was now disheveled, and his clothes were plain, almost institutional. Elias's breath hitched in his throat. It was Marcus. He rushed towards him, pushing past the chaos, his focus singular. "Marcus!" he cried, his voice thick with emotion. Marcus looked up, his eyes wide and confused. There was no recognition, only a flicker of fear. "Who are you?" he mumbled, his voice hoarse. The words were a fresh wound, a painful reminder of the amnesia. Elias reached out, his hand gently touching Marcus's arm. "It's Elias," he said, his voice softer now, pleading. "Your best friend." He showed Marcus the Celtic knot tattoo on his own wrist, the shared symbol of their unbreakable bond. Marcus stared at it, a faint flicker of recognition, a hesitant wrinkle between his brows. It was a start. The reunion was cut short by the escalating firefight. The syndicate guards, alerted to the intrusion, were swarming the wing. Kael, maintaining a defensive perimeter, urged Elias to get Marcus out. "We need to go, Mr. Thorne, now." Elias, his arm around Marcus, helped him up, guiding him towards the exit. Marcus, disoriented and weak, stumbled, but Elias held him steady, his strength fueled by desperation. As they moved through the chaotic corridors, Marcus seemed to react to the sounds of gunfire and the shouts of the guards with a strange mix of fear and almost instinctive awareness. He flinched, but then his eyes would dart around, assessing the situation, a glimmer of his old analytical mind resurfacing. Elias felt a surge of hope. The amnesia might be deep, but Marcus's essence, his core intelligence, was still there, dormant but not extinguished. They reached the extraction point, a secluded landing pad where a stealth helicopter waited. The journey was fraught with danger, with syndicate operatives hot on their heels. Elias, still shielding Marcus, returned fire with a weapon he had never expected to wield, his movements surprisingly fluid, driven by a primal need to protect his friend. He felt a surge of cold fury as he realized the full extent of what the syndicate had done, the fear and pain they had inflicted on Marcus. Finally, they reached the helicopter, scrambling inside as the rotor blades whirred to life. Kyle and his team provided cover fire, ensuring their escape. As the helicopter ascended, Elias looked back at the burning fortress, a monument to the destruction they had wrought. He held Marcus close, feeling the fragile weight of his friend in his arms, a ghost returned from the brink. The immediate danger was over, but the road to recovery, the journey back to who Marcus once was, had just begun. The days that followed were a blur of medical assessments, psychological evaluations, and Elias's unwavering presence. Marcus was physically weak, malnourished, and understandably traumatized. The amnesia was profound, a thick fog obscuring his past. He remembered fragments, fleeting images, but his identity, his history, was a gaping void. He still called Elias Mr. Thorne, a constant, painful reminder of the chasm between them. Elias brought in the best neurologists, psychologists, and therapists from across the globe, sparing no expense to help Marcus recover. He surrounded him with familiar objects, played their favorite music, recounted shared memories, hoping to spark a flicker of recognition. He spent hours by his bedside, reading to him from their favorite books, talking about their past adventures, his voice gentle and patient. He wouldn't give up. He wouldn't allow the syndicate to fully steal Marcus's past. The scar on Marcus's face, though a constant reminder of his ordeal, also became a symbol of his survival. Elias promised Marcus that he would arrange for the best plastic surgeons to minimize its appearance, but for now, it was a testament. The mountain fortress had been a satellite, but the signal was coming from home. As Marcus slowly regained his strength in a high-security wing of Elias's primary residence, Elias turned his sights on the why. How did the syndicate know exactly when to strike 3 years ago? How did they bypass Marcus's personal security? The answer lay in the decrypted financial files recovered from the lighthouse. Elias sat in his darkened study, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in his cold eyes. He wasn't looking at offshore accounts or shadowy operatives anymore. He was looking at Thorne Medical's own internal auditing. A series of microtransactions, disguised as equipment maintenance, had been siphoning funds into a shell company owned by a man Elias had trusted for a decade. Julian Vane, the chief operating officer of Thorne Medical. Julian had been the one to encourage Elias to move on after the funeral. Julian had been the one to handle the disposal of Marcus's personal research files for legal reasons. The twist was more jagged than the scar on Marcus's face. Julian hadn't just sold Marcus out for money. He was a founding member of the syndicate's inner circle. They didn't want the gene therapy to cure people. They wanted to use it to create a biological subscription to health, where only the ultra-wealthy could survive. Marcus had refused to monetize life, so Julian had arranged for his death. Elias didn't call the police. He didn't call a lawyer. He called a board meeting for 2 a.m. When Julian walked into the boardroom expecting a crisis talk about the mountain raid, he found the room empty, except for Elias and a large high-definition screen. The screen flickered to life, showing a live feed of the exhumed grave of Arthur Jenkins. "The grave was a lie, Julian," Elias said, his voice a terrifying whisper. "But the one I'm building for you is very, very real." Julian's face drained of color as the doors locked. Elias didn't just want a confession. He wanted the codes to the memory dampener the syndicate used. He needed to unlock Marcus's mind, and he was willing to use every dark method Julian had helped create to get them. 6 months later, the sun broke through the clouds over a sprawling estate in the Swiss Alps. There were no marble headstones here. Instead, there was a lush garden filled with white lilies and a porch that overlooked a serene lake. Marcus sat in a wicker chair, a book in his lap. His scar on his face had been softened by the world's best surgeons, Thorne Medical's own, but he chose to keep a faint line of it. A reminder, he called it. His memory wasn't a perfect mirror yet. There were still cracks and blurry edges, but he knew Elias. He knew their childhood. He knew the dream they had built. Elias walked out onto the porch carrying 2 cups of coffee. He didn't look like the cold titan who had dismantled a global criminal empire and sent a dozen board members to black site prisons. He looked at peace. "It's Sunday," Elias said, handing a cup to Marcus. Marcus smiled, his eyes bright with the intelligence that once had been suppressed. "So, what's the update, Elias? How's the empire?" Elias sat down beside him. For 3 years he had talked to a stone. Now he talked to his brother. "The empire is evolving. We've released the gene therapy as an open-source patent. No one owns it. No one can hide it. Thorne Medical just opened a wing named after Arthur Jenkins, the man who stood in for you when the world was dark." Marcus leaned back, watching the light dance on the water. "You went to war for me, Elias. You used your power to break the world just to find one man." "I didn't break the world," Elias replied softly. "I fixed it. It just took seeing your face in that pub to remind me why we started this in the first place." The 2 friends sat in a comfortable silence, the ritual of the Sunday update finally complete. The billionaire was still filthy rich, and his hospitals were still the best in the world. But for the first time in 3 years, Elias Thorne wasn't a man standing alone in the rain. He was home.